It don't take all that. It's too loud as it is, and here you come yelling and screaming. Listen, when you get desperate enough, when your situation get bad enough, you ain't gonna care who you bother on your road. You ain't gonna care who don't want you to be loud. When I think about all that I'm going through, and you don't know my struggle, I'm having my own private prayer meeting right here on my pew. Hosanna! Tell somebody, if you don't like noise, you shouldn't have sat on my road. In the gospel according to John, there is a word from the Lord in chapter number 12. And there's a whole lot of verses that serve as our context, but just kind of follow me, beginning with verse number 12, and I'll tell you where to skip to, because it's about 16 or so verses there, but I'm not going to read them just in the interest of time. But meet me at John 12 and 12, and I'll tell you where to skip to. It says, on the next day, many people that were come to the feast, when they heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem, they took branches of palm trees and went forth to meet him, and they cried, Hosanna! Blessed is the King of Israel that cometh in the name of the Lord. And Jesus, when he had found a young ass, sat thereon, as it is written, Fear not, daughter of Zion, behold, thy king cometh, sitting on an ass's coat. These things understood not his disciples at first. But when Jesus was glorified, then they remembered those things that were written of him, and that they had done these things unto him. If you would go to verse number 20, all the way to verse number 20, it says, and there were certain Greeks among them that came up to worship at the feast. The same came therefore to Philip, which was of Bethsaida of Galilee, and they said to Philip, they said, Sir, we desire, or we would see Jesus. And Philip cometh and told Andrew, and again Andrew and Philip told Jesus. And Jesus answered them and said, the hour is now come, that the Son of Man should be glorified. Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, he says, it abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit. Here it is. He that loveth his life shall lose it, and he that hateth his life in this world shall keep it unto life eternal. If any man serve me, let him follow me. And where I am, there shall also my servant be. And if any man serve me, him will my Father honor. Now is my soul troubled. But what am I going to say? Father, save me from this hour? He says, no, because for this cause came I unto this hour. So, Father, glorify your name. Then came there a voice from heaven saying, listen to God, I have both glorified it and will glorify it again. Brothers and sisters, with your prayers this morning, as we try to get our minds ready for resurrection celebration on next Sunday, I want to talk for a little while about the road less traveled. On your way to your seat, tell somebody, the road less traveled. Look at it for a moment and let it sink in. You got a choice. The road less traveled. Ladies and gentlemen, when you look at the life of Jesus, and when you examine him strictly on the basis of his public profile, you'll find that there are many things that can be and have been said about Jesus. And the basis of those conversations, it really depends on who you ask. There are some people that will describe Jesus as simply a good man, a helper of people, if you will, a humanitarian at heart. Then there are others who will simply label Jesus as a teacher on the same level as Muhammad or even Gandhi or some other philosophical authority. They will acknowledge the fact that Jesus was a good teacher. His values, his lessons, his lifestyle. At the very least, the world will agree with you when you talk about the idea that Jesus is good, even if they resist the idea that he is God. Are y'all following me so far? For those of us who have faith, there's a little bit more that you and I add to the conversation, because we understand that Jesus is much more than just a good man. Have I got a witness here? No, to us, he's sovereign, not just the Son of God, but he is equal with God in personality. He is sovereign. He is our Savior. He is our leader, and he is our Lord. And so there's no one label that you can really put on Jesus. Why? Because the old folks say he is my everything. God is my all in all. He's a doctor in a sick room. That's one thing that he is. He's a lawyer. Wish I had a church here in the courtroom. He is a bridge over troubled waters. He is a battle axe in the time of battle. Anybody know the Jesus that I'm talking about? He is a shelter in the time of storm. He is bread when you're hungry. Keep sitting there. He is water when you're thirsty. That's what I bring to the conversation. He is a rock in a weary land. He is peace in the midst of my life's storms. He is a healer. He is a redeemer. He is the mother when you're motherless. He's a father when you're father. He is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. Jesus is not either or. Tell somebody he's all the above. And so understand that there are many things that can be said about Jesus, both on the sacred and the secular level. That's why this message this morning is so important for us. And I need y'all to let these grits boil slow today. Because you see, of all the labels that even we come up with for Jesus, while his character does reveal all those things, hear me, I submit that there is more to his character than even our culture can understand. You've heard me say this before, and I'm moving towards the text now. Jesus was countercultural. I used that word over a year ago when I was teaching something else and I was describing Jesus. I said the best word you can use for Jesus is to call him countercultural. And for many people who encountered him during his ministry, even today, we would have to describe him as an ecclesiastical agitator. Depending on who you ask, Jesus was a religious rebel. Depending on who you talk to, he was a renegade rabbi and a political enemy of the state. I'm trying to get you to understand the context of Easter and why Jesus was so problematic for so many people and why he was hung on the cross in the first place. Depending on who you ask, Jesus was not a good man. He was a bad man in a lot of people's eyes. But the benefit that you and I have this morning is that we can look at Jesus in his totality. See, you have the whole Bible from Genesis to Revelation. You have the fulfillment of the Old Testament and how it ties in to the New Testament. In other words, we have a better understanding of who Jesus is and who he was in the context of God's plan for this world. At the time, they didn't know who they had. At the time, they didn't understand the fullness of who he was. But even in our dispensation, even post-resurrection, there's still some things about Jesus that Christians don't quite understand. When you look at his short life of 33 years, what it reveals to us is the fact, here it is, on purpose and by design, Jesus took what I want to call the road less traveled. Again, on purpose, by choice, and by divine design, Jesus took what is called the road less traveled. Hear me. Life, ladies and gentlemen, is all about choices. Would you agree? It's all about choices. You and I make choices, simple choices, complicated choices a few times every day. But when you look at the way God operates, most times, this is your first point if you keep in score, most times you'll find in life the correct choice won't always be the comfortable choice. Anybody know what I'm talking about here? The right choice is not always the most convenient choice. When you're doing the will of God, the correct choice won't always be the comfortable one. I wish I could tell you that following God was going to be easy. I wish I could tell you that doing the right thing was going to always be comfortable. But the fact of the matter is, when I look at the gospel, when I look at what the Father did through and in the life of his Son, ain't nothing easy about being Jesus or following Jesus. Let's start from the beginning. When God got ready to send his Son, look at how complicated God made it. The vehicle he chose to use was a peasant virgin teenager named Mary. That's unconventional. That's uncomfortable. That's inconvenient. But that was the person and that was the place where God decided to send his Son. Here he is, the Son of God, God in the flesh. And the location where our Lord is laid is not convenient. It's a manger filled with hay. It's a barnyard in Bethlehem. Not convenient, not comfortable, but that was God's choice. Fast forward 12 years, Jesus is living a life that is opposite of most adolescents. Think about your preteen. As my 11-year-old sits behind me. Think about your teenager. Think about your little children, where most preteens are somewhere playing PlayStation. Countercultural Jesus is in the temple talking to doctors and lawyers. Wish I had a Bible reader here. And when Mary and Joseph finally caught up with him and said, Jesus, why did you stay behind? We've been looking for you for 2 days. He said to his parents, as a 12-year-old, I don't mean no disrespect, mama, but I must be. I'm walking you through the Bible here about my father's bed. He took the road less traveled. Fast forward 18 years, he's getting ready to launch his ministry, and the men that he chooses to roll with, we talked about this last week, his core is far from conventional. Hanging with these shady characters. Y'all know them, don't you? These fishermen, these tax collectors, these people who are not very good if you're trying to build a brand. If you're trying to start a church, if you're trying to launch a ministry, those 12 were the last jokers that you would want to start with. But again, Jesus chooses the road less traveled. He surrounds himself with people that society has already written off. The least of these, he wants to be around them. The hungry people, that's who he wants to hang with. The hurting people, dysfunctional people, the sinners, the sick people. He said, I didn't come here for people who are perfect. I need 5 or 6 church folk here. I didn't come here for folk that have it all together. My grace is only for people who can admit that they need it. Now, if you don't need God's grace, then this message ain't for you. If you ain't never messed up, then Jesus didn't die on the cross for you. But for the rest of us who can be honest this morning, all of us can thank God for Jesus. We could not come to him, but thank God he came to us. And so while he's saying all of that, people are flocking to him from all over the place. All over the region, all over, everywhere he went. Thousands of folk follow him. But when you look at the lifestyle Jesus lived, nothing about his surroundings would make you think he's successful. He's not rich. He don't live in a suburb or a fancy subdivision of Galilee. He said, foxes have holes. Birds have a nest. But here I am, the Son of Man, and have nowhere to lay my head. That's the real Jesus. He ate what he could get his hands on. He slept wherever he was welcome. He relied on the Lord to supply all his needs, and he taught his followers to do the same. He said, Matthew, I know you got good benefits over there at the state. I know you got good benefits at the tax collector's office, but leave that good job and come follow me. He said, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, I know y'all got a good fisherman business going on, but I want y'all to drop all of that and come follow this poor man who's relying on the Lord. He said, you used to catch mullet, now I want you to catch men. You used to catch salmon, but now I want you to catch me some souls. I wish I had some help in here. Have you ever had God to take you down the inconvenient road? Have you ever had the Lord to take you down a path that make people question your sanity and your good sense? I need about 50 people here that have learned how to trust God, because the only explanation you can give folk is that the Lord told me to do it. Why did you quit that job and start your own business? I don't know, the Lord told me to. Why did you go back to school and took 2 jobs to get yourself through school? I don't know, the Lord told me to. Why did that relationship have to end in 2015? I don't know, the Lord told me to break up with him. Why did you start cutting people off? Why? Because I had to go somewhere else and them folk couldn't go with me. Is there anybody here that has ever had the Lord to take you down a different road and you really could not explain it? Tell somebody, I'm taking the road less traveled. I'm taking the road less traveled. See, I could get hung up just there, but I feel this thing starting to boil a little bit. But turn the fire down. Let me teach you a little more. Put some butter in there and let it stir a little bit longer. By the time you get to John 12, Jesus' ministry has grown tremendously. Thousands of followers, hundreds of disciples, and his popularity is at an all-time high. By the time you get to verse number 12, this is what I've been trying to get to, there's a party in Jerusalem being planned in his honor. Understanding context, is Passover time. And all the Jews are gathered there to commemorate this feast. Y'all remember what the Passover is all about? God commanded it to be the same time every year. He said, that time when I brought y'all's ancestors out of Egypt, that time when the death angel passed through Egypt, but he passed over you because the blood was on the doorpost of your ancestors' house, and your enemies were taken out only because the blood was on you and not on them. So every year, I want you to remember the feast of the Passover. They sang, they shouted, they worshiped, and they ate. But this time, there were people in that group that had a different idea. Seeing Jesus as the anointed Son of God, this subgroup, if you will, was now ready to crown him as their king. Understand how some in that group viewed this thing. They celebrated Jesus because Jesus represented to them the end of Roman oppression. They said, woohoo, we ain't got to pay tribute to Caesar no more. We don't have to bow to Caesar anymore. No more paying taxes. No more Pharisees and Sadducees. No more religious ritualism. So we can finally get this righteous revolution on. Yes, come on, Jesus, let us crown you. So what do they do according to verse 12? It says when they heard that Jesus was on his way into town, they laid out palm branches. They met him in the street. See, the roads were bumpy in those days. The roads were not paved like they taken 5 years to do Capitol Circle. The roads were not paved back in those days, so they laid out palm branches. And they laid even their garments in the road to ensure that the king would have a comfortable entry. What do they see when they make it into town? Once Jesus makes it in, they done laid out these palm branches. They heard that he's coming. But then, what do they see? They don't see Jesus on a stallion. They don't see him being pulled by a chariot. No. Jesus, not with the fanfare of a king. This man rides into his inauguration, not in a Cadillac, but on a colt. Hear me now. Not a DeVille, but a donkey. I'm going to get some help after a while. Not a Mustang, but a mule. Brothers and sisters, all the fanfare that would normally be associated with a king, Jesus took the road less traveled and came in like a common man. Point number 2, and we got to roll out of here. Everything that glitters ain't necessarily God. Have I got a witness up in here? Everything that's shiny, everything that's glittery ain't always from the Lord. Too often we put stock in the outward appearance. Right now, you done looked your neighbor up and down that road. You done checked them out from the outside, but you have no idea what their spiritual condition is on the inside. We spend excessive, egregious, exorbitant amounts of money trying to front ourselves off as more than what we are. I need some folk in here, but you got to understand how God looks at things, because whether he showed up in a chariot or on a donkey, he's still Jesus. Yeah. Whether he was wearing rags or whether he was wearing a robe, tell somebody, he's still Jesus. And the point that you got to understand is the fact that everything glittery ain't always godly. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? I wish I had about 300 people in here this morning who can still be anointed without all the accessories. Somebody ought to help me here. Whether I got money or not, tell your neighbor, I'm still me. Whether I live in a mansion or if I live on the street, I'm still me. If it's Gucci or if it's Goodwill, I'm still me. If it's a Dooney or if it's from the dollar store, you still you. I don't care if it's Fendi or from the flea market. Tell somebody, I'm still me. I can shout when I'm me. I can shout and rejoice because no matter what I have, tell your neighbor, I'm still me. That's good stuff. I don't care what you say. Jesus rolls into town, unconventional, and he's still Jesus. What do you know? The chariot didn't take away his anointing. The clothes did not make the man. He rolled in on the road less traveled. And I think that's why the people laid their garments out in front of Jesus, because nothing they had was more important than him. Nothing that they had was not good, too good to where they could not lay it down. In other words, I lay down my title at his feet. I lay down this spirit of self-importance at his feet. I lay down my position at his feet. I lay down all the things that I think make me somebody. Tell somebody, lay it down, lay it down, lay it down. Lay down your pride. Lay down your arrogance. Lay down that spirit of greed. Lay down the spirit of self-importance. If Jesus could be humble and he was righteous, how can we be arrogant and we just filthy rags? We got to recognize who we really are. And they have sense enough to know what's standing in front of us. Those folks started crying out when they saw Jesus. They said, Hosanna! That felt pretty good there. Hey, Hosanna! That's the preacher way to say it. You can just say, Hosanna. No. Hey, Hosanna. Blessed is the King of Israel that comes in the name of the Lord. Do you know what Hosanna means? By the time you figure it out, you're going to be shouting Hosanna in about 30 seconds. Hosanna means save us now. In other words, get us out. Lord, bring us through. Make a way for us. When I look at what's going on in the world today, all I can say is, Hosanna! When I look at this election for president, Hosanna! All this buffoonery, all this racism, all this greed, all this arrogance, all this hatred on both sides, Hosanna! Somebody say, it don't take all that. It's too loud as it is, and here you come yelling and screaming. Listen, when you get desperate enough, when your situation get bad enough, you ain't gonna care who you bother on your road. You ain't gonna care who don't want you to be loud. When I think about all that I'm going through, and you don't know my struggle, I'm having my own private prayer meeting right here on my pew. Hosanna! Tell somebody, if you don't like noise, you shouldn't have sat on my road. Hosanna. Save us now. If you ain't never had to call him, just keep living. Because there's going to be some situations your degree can't get you out of. Your money can't buy you out of. Ain't none of your friends going to be available or able to help you. At the end of the day, all I got is Hosanna. Save us now. Lord, I ain't trying to tell you what to do or when to do it, but I need you now. Somebody ought to help me here. Lord, I ain't giving you no deadlines. I know you can do what you want to do when you want to, but Lord, in my situation, I need you now. Hosanna. Save us now. One would think that with all this attention that Jesus is getting, they think he's getting ready to overthrow their political oppressors. They think he's getting ready to start a new religion. I mean, it seemed to me like Jesus would kind of stick his chest out a little bit. Like, yeah, Jesus, do that trick that Moses did with that stick. Just wave your staff over all of Jerusalem and wipe our enemies out. Show Herod who's the boss. He did try to kill you when you were a baby. Show Herod who's in charge. Show Caesar and all his cronies that we ain't having it no more. That's the reason they threw the party in the first place. I've been hearing you talk about a kingdom, Jesus. Let's go ahead and set it up. Give me a seat on the right. Give my brother a seat on the left here. But that's where Jesus, again, is countercultural. Because point number 3, I got 4, so wait on me. Point number 3, don't ever let the party distract you from your purpose. I told you this, the road less traveled. Don't ever get so caught up in the party that you lose sight of your purpose. Most of us want to take the comfortable path. in life. Most of us want the convenient path, but Jesus is talking about a group of people who are willing to follow him down the road less traveled. All this praise going on, all the partying going on. Listen to what Jesus says in verse 23. He says, the hour is come that the Son of Man, I'm almost through, should be glorified. Not glorified in the worldly sense of celebration, but glorified in the godly sense of suffering. He said, as much as y'all would like to party, I can't ignore the fact that God put me here for a purpose. It's like when you got something greater that you're working on, but the folk around you are satisfied with where they are and where things are. You at that point have to make up in your mind, it's not time for me to party because my work ain't done yet. Anybody know what I'm talking about? To all them relaxed people in your life, to all the complacent folk in your life, they satisfied with where they are, but in your spirit, you ain't ready to party. In your spirit, you ain't popping no bottles. Why? Because you know that there's something else that you're pressing towards, that you're working on. I've come far, but I have not yet arrived. There's a few of us in here that want more from life than just a party. And I know it's only a remnant here, so that's why your neighbor may not shout about this. But the problem with taking the road less traveled is that in order to get the purpose, you got to go through some pain. Here Jesus is responding to this big party they done threw for him. Watch how he just sucks all the air out the room. Watch how he just kills everybody's buzz. Jesus says, unless a corn of wheat fall to the ground and die, it abides alone. But if it dies, if it goes through that pain, the promise from the Lord is it'll bring forth much fruit. That ain't what they want to hear. We talking about having a hostile takeover, and you talking about lay down and die. Do you know why some people don't take the road less traveled? Most folk don't take the road less traveled is because that road is usually filled with potholes. Painful situation. That's why some of your friends take the easy route. That's why some folks stay doing the same thing for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, don't want to do nothing different. They don't want to take the road less traveled. You know why? Because that's too risky. Watch this. We love the idea of success, but don't nobody want to suffer. We love purpose because that's the new buzzword in the church now. I'm going after my purpose. I'm going after my destiny. We love purpose, but we don't like process. You want to graduate, but don't want to go to school. You want success. You want glory, but don't want to grind. Think about the one person that you admire. Think about one person either in the world or in your immediate circle that you admire. I'm telling you, that person did not get where they are today taking the easy road in life. Anything that's worth having is worth working for. And ain't no blessing gonna just drop in your lap because you prayed for it. Ain't nothing just gonna come to you just because you want it. No, if you want to know what it really takes to be successful, I'm sorry to tell you, you're gonna have to suffer. We love God's will. I want the will of God for my life. I want to be in God's will, but you don't want God's work. Your cousin and them, they love having, but they don't like hurting in order to have. God sent me here to tell all the partiers in the room. Point number 4, we rolling out. Don't expect the Lord to make you if you're not willing to allow him to break you. I'm getting you ready for Easter. See, you thought that this suffering thing was only for Jesus. You thought that this going through, it was only for Jesus. No, he said, he that loveth his life shall lose it. And if you want to hold on to this world and all its accommodations, my friend, you are dead already. If you're not willing to die to yourself, if you don't hate your life in this world by comparison, loving God more than anything else, if you're not willing to give that up for my sake, Jesus said, you will never have eternal life. I can't make you till I break you. If any man serve me, he says, let him follow me. And wherever I am, that's where my servant will be also. And Jesus says, if any man serve me, then my Father will honor him. I believe he is calling a group of us to take the road that is scarcely traveled by most people. The easy road is not for a child of God. I know that just sucks the air out the room, don't it? Y'all was shouting 3 minutes ago. See how Jesus just kills your buzz on a Sunday morning? The comfortable road is not what he's calling us to. The safe road for many of us is not what he's calling us to. The complacent road, this life full of minimums. I told the Lord 3 years ago that I was through. In terms of what can be done, what can be accomplished, I'm like, Lord, what else you want from me? He said, I'm just getting started. You just doing the minimum. What you think is a big deal, you have not really seen, because I'm trying to get you beyond the minimum. I'm trying not to get you to settle for what you are used to. And God is calling a few of us around here to go a different path. And it's not always about where the majority is going. Remember, Jesus said, broad is the way that leads to hell, and narrow is the way that leads to righteousness. Sometimes it's the road less traveled, so you can't afford to be trying to get with the minority. When it comes to the decision that you make in life, you can't be getting with the majority, rather. You cannot be trying to follow the trends of today. This is a life of breaking and making. This is a life of shifting and sifting. This is a life of God holding you and molding you. And the path that leads to your purpose is the road less traveled by everybody else. Has anybody here ever felt like God was treating you worse than everybody else? Lord, I know folk that don't go to church. Ain't never read nobody. They only go to church for weddings, funerals, and they'll probably be here next Sunday. Lord, I know them folk, and they seem to have it going better than I do. Why are you taking me down the hard road? Why do I have to struggle? Why do I have to cry? Why do I have to go through? God says the greater the struggle, the greater your strength. The deeper you go down on your knees in prayer, the more you will grow when it's time to show some good fruit. I'm telling you, this world is going to hell on a rocket ship. So you can't afford to be trying to do what everybody else do. So what you going to do, Jesus? Are you going to stay for the party, or you going to go after your purpose? Come here. What you going to do, child of God? Are you going to stay mediocre, or you going to follow your master? Talk to me here. Jesus said, my soul is troubled because the reality of my mission is finally coming down on me. God says you're at a fork in the road in your life, and you got some decisions to make. I'm at the intersection between God's will and my way. He says, what shall I say at this critical juncture in my life? Do I punk out? Do I settle? Do I compromise on my purpose? Jesus said, no, this is what I was built for. I wish I had some help here. This is what I was sent for. This is what I was made for. And tell somebody around you, I've come too far to turn around now. He said, Father, glorify thy name. In other words, Lord, do what you got to do to me so you can get something through me. Is there anybody here have settled on the fact that God's will is what you want for your life? I may have to cry, but if it's God's will, those tears will water my life, and I'll come out better than I was. Is there anybody here that know that trouble don't last always, but I gotta go through it in order to get to the place where the Lord wants me to be? He said, Father,
glorify your name. And I'm telling you on my way out of here that God's glory is not always in your good times, but God can get the glory in your season of suffering. Can I get a witness here? Yes, God gets the glory when you get a new job, but he get even more glory when they give you hell on this job. Can I get a witness here? God gets the glory when your bills are paid up, but God gets more glory when you struggle from month to month. God gets the glory when he heals your body, but he get even more glory when he keep you in your sickness. God gets the glory when my child does well, but he get more glory when my child gives me hell. Is there anybody here want God to get the glory out of your life? He can get the glory when everybody celebrates you, but he get more glory when everybody hates you, but you keep on walking. Can I get a witness here? God gets the glory when my skies are clear, but he get more glory when I trust him in the storm. Shake your neighbor's hand and tell them, neighbor, I've seen glory on the good days, but tell them I saw more glory on my bad days. Jesus said, Father, glorify your name. Have your way in my life. Do what you want to do. He said, I done my dance, but now it's time to die. He said, I went to the party, but it's time for my purpose. And right early, one Friday morning, he left the party, went to his purpose. They rejected celebrity. He said, I gotta be a servant. He said, I don't want a crown until I bear my cross. They led him up the road less traveled, led him up Calvary's hills. Can y'all help me preach here? Stretch him wide, hung him high. He died. I wish I had a church here. I said he died for my sins. But tell somebody that's not how the story ends. Tell them I may not make it to Easter Sunday, so let me tell you a week ahead. Tell somebody Sunday morning, he got up with all power in his hands. Is there anybody here ready to walk that road? Be careful how you answer. Shake your neighbor's hand just one last time. The skillet is hot now. Get them eggs going now. I'm on my way to the table. Shake your neighbor's hands and tell them, neighbor, God gets the glory if I'm up or if I'm down. If I'm broke, he gets the glory. If I'm sick, he get the glory. When I'm crying, he get the glory. But tell somebody, whatever I lose, he's able to give it back to me. The same God that kept Jesus, he's able to keep me. He may not come when you want him, but he's